Well, Kelly Foss, you ready to do this?
I'm ready.
Awesome. So right off the bat, we begin every Ideas into Action episode with the bestowing of a gift to our illustrious guest. So we have today in a fancy new money bag, a gift for you.
Amazing.
And sorry to Pollyanna Reed, we tried to get these money bags in time for her episode, but they didn't make it. So you are the first guest to get your gift in a money bag.
Wow, beautiful.
And why the money bag? Because this is invaluable. This gift is priceless. Aha!
Oh, beautiful. I love it. I was hoping her name would come up.
Yes, it is Marie Kondo's. Sorry, I'm going to get the title wrong. If you could just read it for the listeners, that'd be great.
The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up.
And it's an animated book. It's a manga, as I understand it.
Oh, it's a manga.
Yeah.
Okay. Author of The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, but it is a manga of tidying it up.
Now,
very cool.
I will admit, Kelly, I know nothing about Marie Kondo. Am I even saying her name right? Marie Kondo? Marie Kondo?
Marie Kondo.
But I know that she's all the rage when it comes to minimalism, a topic that you are very passionate about, and I know that Kwaku and I and the listeners want to know all about. So tell us about how your journey as a minimalist began. Where did you first get the inspiration, even the understanding of this concept?
Absolutely. Actually, interesting enough, I was at a period in my life where I was kind of confused and lost in life and like, hey, like, what do I need to do to make the changes I need to be happier and fulfill that itch inside me that says, I know I can do more and I know I'm not doing or fulfilling my potential in a sense, you know? Where can I find greater meaning and fulfillment? And so I started listening to self-help podcasts, one of them being Impact Theory.
Mm-hmm. Shout out to Tom, yeah.
Yeah, Tom Villieu. And another podcast I started listening to was The Minimalists.
Okay.
So they're two guys quit their six-figure jobs to live with less. Ryan Nicodemus and Joshua Fields Milburn. And so I started listening to them and I started to realize, wow, like one of the ways that I can start pivoting in my life is to start removing all of the excess in my life, all the clutter that's holding me back.
Yeah.
And you know what? It wasn't just my physical clutter, and that is somewhere where I started. I started with my closet. It was also mental clutter and digital clutter.
Emotional clutter, right?
Yes. And so, as you know, I have a podcast now called Millennial Minimalist.
Hey.
And that is with my best girlfriend, Lauren Morley.
Shout out to Lauren, yeah.
Yeah, she's the one who motivated me to start living this way. So she said, hey, like, I know you're going through a tough time right now. And, you know, one of the ways that I kind of clear my mind is being in a very, very serene space, not a lot of stuff. And she's like, I was like, where do you do that? She's like, in my home. And I was like, wow, I can't really do that in my home. I find that I'm quite distracted and there's a lot of stuff everywhere. So although I've always been very clean and I haven't owned that much stuff, I started realizing I was owning a lot of things that were starting to own me.
That's very interesting. You were starting to own a lot of things that started to own you. Wow. It's very profound. Okay. And then what did you begin to purge?
So I started with my closet, items that I haven't worn in years.
Okay.
Started selling them on Kijiji.
Good for you.
And Craigslist. It's so funny. Lauren inspired me to do that. Started doing that. And then I started realizing, wow, like, you know, as part of being a little bit lost, the first thing I did is I started writing down, what are my interests? What are the things that are making me unhappy? What are the things that I want in life that I don't have today? Yeah. And that being said, I mean, with the Impact Theory podcast, they're really motivating me to get out there and fulfill my potential in a way, which is overused. But I'm like, how do I take action? How do I do this? And I started realizing that by eliminating all the stuff that I wasn't utilizing in my life, all the excess, I could start hyper-focusing on all those areas. And so one of my interests that's been an interest of mine forever is obviously storytelling. Right. I love storytelling. I love connecting with people. I love connecting people, and I love snackable content. So I love producing engaging, immersive content. So that being said, I decided, hey, like, I want to be a freelancer.
Yeah.
I want to be an independent contractor who can fulfill those areas of my life. Like, let's just take a risk. let's just take a list. I finally listened to that voice. I was like, let's take a risk. So I took that risk. And so today I'm working as an independent contractor. My first job was building engaging content for a cool artificial intelligence startup called Diversio, which helps companies be more diverse and inclusive, which is very cool. And then now I'm overseeing the Bang Olufsen Yorkville run, which is an annual run that happens in Toronto and raises almost $1 million for charities.
I love this. And there's something very, very special about the act of just cleaning the things around you that lets you focus on the things that truly matter. I talked recently, I was at Capital One. I did a keynote for them. And the crux of the keynote, like the essence of the keynote was do less things. And it was met with a lot of blank stares in the audience. A lot of people were like looking at me very quizzically thinking, why are you telling me to do less? And I had to reinforce the Pareto distribution, which is 80% of your results come from only 20% of your inputs. And this is consistent across anything in your life. And so you took an audit of your life and you made a list of the things that are important to you, the things that you truly want to do, and everything else suddenly became labeled as noise, as clutter, as things that need to go.
Honestly, my mentality has completely shifted. I read the book A Mindset by Dweck, which was inspired by impact theory.
Right.
And I was like, wow, like everything is controlled by me. I always thought like, oh, one day it's going to happen. One day I'm going to accomplish this. No, you need to take that action.
Yeah.
And now I walk through life every day. And I know I sound funny when I say this, but I am no longer tempted. I know that I'm so happy that I have what I need and that I wake up every day feeling fulfilled, mainly because I'm pursuing my podcast, because I'm super passionate about minimalism. But it's like, wow, like even if I have a down day, I know that I'm waking up and I'm in a direction that I'm happy with.
You know what? You've become the marketer's worst nightmare. You are the anathema to marketers. Absolutely. Because you are enough. There's nothing that nobody can sell you anymore.
Nope.
Because you feel like you are perfect enough, you're efficient enough, you're progressive enough, you're satisfied enough, you're innovative enough. The myths of modernity just don't work on you the same way that marketers would want them to on everyone else.
Yes. That being said, I do feel like I'm quite imperfect at times. So, and that's what Lauren and I love to remind our audience is that, you know, the dynamic in our podcast is that Lauren is the true minimalist, the natural minimalist. She's always lived this way, whereas I'm the minimalist adopter.
That's it.
So this is a new lifestyle for me, and so there's trial and error. And interesting enough, our latest episode's on emotional minimalism, and that's a part of minimalism that Lauren hasn't mastered. Yeah. So she was like, "Oh, I'm so excited for this. I'm so excited to do the research on this because." You know, there's a lot that I can learn and share with the audience.
Absolutely. I was traveling recently, and one of the things I love doing when I'm traveling is just watching commercial TV. Because I think that so much of our life now is just about like Crave and Netflix and just heavy curation with ad block on. So I kind of like to just kind of zone out when I'm traveling and just see what the commercials are speaking to. And I saw a commercial for an episode on TLC of, I think it was like Save My Life Clutter edition or something, like Hoarders. That's what it was called. It was Hoarders. And then I was tempted to watch that episode, and I watched it, and I was just sick to my stomach. This one house that this lady had curated was just clutter galore. It was, I don't know how she moved through the house without stepping on things or stepping on things and hurting herself. And it made me think, it's like, do I know anyone successful that has a lot of noise? Their exogenous surroundings are just filled with clutter. And I just ran a blank.
Oh,
I think
really?
everyone I know, everyone who's been on this podcast, everyone that we work with, at least in the bubble that I've curated, they all believe that focus is as much about what to do as it is about what not to do. And I think that not part, I think, gets lost. And I know there's a lot of listeners right now thinking about, how do I begin my journey with minimalism? How do I embrace the spirit of minimalism? I think my advice to them would be, start focusing on the things not to do. So in your opinion, Kelly, if somebody wants to begin this journey about purging things in their life in all realms, physical, mental, emotional, so on and so forth, where do they begin?
Okay, well, they can begin in a couple areas. If they find that they have a lot of stuff and that it is affecting their productivity, then that's a great place to start. I always say the closet is a great place to start. However, back to your point about how you think that majority of people who are successful would have kind of clutter-free environments. There are some people who, especially artists, who have, you know, it's almost organized chaos.
Organized chaos, yeah.
But there's beauty in that, because like for a painter, for example, he uses every single item in his studio, even if it is a mess.
Mm-hmm.
So that's okay. So I like to remind our listeners that it's really about living intentionally and owning things that you know add value to you every day. If you use the item, then keep it. If you don't use it, then eliminate it.
So I think that's an important distinction to make between mess and clutter, right? Maybe they're two different things. So I think you can have mess, but it can be part of an organized mess. But clutter suggests that it's excess. It's in excess.
Absolutely.
It's unnecessary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What people don't realize is that a lot of this excess clutter, especially in our physical space, is taking up our time.
Mm-hmm.
We don't realize. It's like, wow, and I say start with your closet. Look at the items that you don't use.
Right.
And even just take a day. And I recently did this for my boyfriend. I went into his closet. Great episode. We talked about decluttering your closet. And I talked about the experience. Had quite a disheveled closet. And we created 3 bins. We said 1, you recycle or purge. The next one, you donate. Or the third, you sell.
Okay.
And so for donating and selling, we're the biggest bags, thankfully.
Wow. Yeah.
And then the next day I said, how did it feel? How did it feel walking into your closet? And he goes, it was awesome because it took me 2 minutes to decide what to wear.
Exactly.
Usually I'm like, I don't know where this is or where that is. And it's so interesting. And every time I go home, by the way, side note, I went to my parents' house for Easter and I'm always purging another bag. And my mom's like, do you have anything left?
Yeah.
But I'm like, they're not my best pieces. So we like to say, keep items that have higher quality.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you're going to spend a little bit more up front, you're going to have that item for 5-6 years rather than, 5-6 months,
Exactly.
right? It's a price per wear.
Totally.
Is the whole idea.
And there's a real decision fatigue that comes from that simple act or seemingly simple act of choosing what to wear in the morning, right? Or whatever time you choose to get dressed, you open up your closet and you're like, am I going to wear this article, this color, this combination? I know a lot of people, including myself, who practice the capsule wardrobe.
Yes.
So like people have seen me in this particular outfit and they probably think, okay, Hamza's wearing the exact same shirt, the exact same jeans, the exact same boots, and the exact same blazer. Does this guy even wash his clothes? The truth is I own 7 pairs of these exact same pants.
Oh, really?
I do. And I believe that if you find something that something that you like, something that works, the cost per wear, just invest in a whole bunch of it.
Oh,
and then you
absolutely.
maximize that cost per wear over years.
There are retailers that are picking up on that too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Totally.
Yeah. And a lot of them are ethical and sustainable brands.
Mm-hmm.
And they are now packing two of the same pair of jeans, 2 of the same pairs of T-shirts, black and white, very minimalistic. That being said, I was gonna laugh at you for a second because you said that people were probably thinking, oh, he's wearing the same thing, even though you have 7 of them.
7 of them, yeah.
Well, even if you didn't have 7 of them, people aren't thinking about us. People aren't thinking about what we're wearing. People don't think about.
Aren't they though? Because
They
I do
don't.
all the time. Like,
Oh, you do?
I do. I saw it, both of you as soon as I made like.
Have you seen this?
Yeah, I noticed it at a subconscious level, but maybe you're right. That's my own insecurity and just that constant feeling of like everyone's watching me and everyone's thinking about what I'm wearing and whatnot.
Oh,
So
interesting.
that's some self-work that I need to do. I think confidence has come up as a theme on this podcast. And I think that actually brings us to our nice little transition point here, right? So we've talked about your family. You went back home for Easter. We talked a little bit about fashion and we talked about eyes on you. Let's talk about that moment where you were walking with your mom through the mall at the age of 16 and you saw an advertisement for a modeling competition. Was that something that you noticed first or your mom noticed first?
It was something that my mom noticed first.
Okay.
And it was something that she says, hey, like, Kelly, you should try out. And so I ended up trying out and I ended up winning the contest. And I honestly can't even remember the experience now.
Wow. It was like a whole lifetime ago.
It was a whole lifetime ago. I mean, it was, I guess, half my life ago.
Basically.
Which is crazy.
Which is interesting because you're one of my few friends who I feel like hasn't had multiple careers. You've had multiple lives.
Mm-hmm.
Like you and like one person that comes to mind immediately is another gentleman by the name of Sid who we hope to bring on for season 2. But it's like there's chapters of your life and there was this whole chapter for you specifically that it would take a conversation like this to unearth because you have this whole life, this whole personality, this career that is manifested in the present in 2019. But many people don't know that you lived the life of a model, an international, high-flying, well-traveled, successful model. What was that like for you? When you look back at that particular chapter of your life, what are some of the themes or the feelings that come up?
And you know, it's those themes and those feelings come up all the time. I feel like we grow and we evolve and we change every 5 years or so, and even our friend groups do.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I had such incredible experiences back then that I constantly think about them. And a lot of them are applied to my life today. So modeling. So after winning that contest for a few years, I was modeling during high school. And then going into university, I decided that I would model overseas during the summer months to actually pay for my education, which was super rewarding. So, end of second year, I believe, is the first time I went to Hong Kong. Never had I never had, an interest in going to Asia. And then I realized, wow, didn't realize how amazing Hong Kong is.
Oh, yeah.
And I went...
Entire subcontinent, yeah.
Unbelievable. And just how fast paced it is, and the beautiful palm trees and water and so many different experiences, hikes, and just how clean the city can be. People are like, what? That's Hong Kong?
Right.
And then living in Tokyo. So long story short, I've been to Hong Kong 3 times. I modeled there 3 times. Tokyo once. And then I lived a year in
LA.
Los Angeles, which is another incredible experiences. But combining all of those experiences, I would say the biggest takeaway were the relationships and the conversations I had with interesting people.
Interesting. And not just within your industry.
With outside of my industry.
Oh, wow.
So through the industry, what the beautiful thing about the modeling industry is that, modeling was fun. It was never a passion of mine. But what was great, it was a gateway to meeting interesting people, a lot of successful entrepreneurs in different areas of life. And through that experience, I was like, wow, rather than, I do drink, but I don't drink heavily. So whenever a drink was given in my hand, I put it down and I would have a conversation with someone instead.
That's it.
So it was like, hey, what can I take away from these situations?
Right.
And a lot of these people were successful entrepreneurs who were doing really cool things. And I'm 19, 20 years old, and I'm looking up to these people, and I'm like, wow, I've always been extremely ambitious, and I was like, I want to do this. I want to get your advice. And then, I was 21, I went overseas again, and then I was 22, and I started having these same conversations, and then I realized, wow, some of these people are not happy. And I was like, wow, a lot of them have all the money in the world. I don't understand.
Right.
All the money in the world, and they're bored. They're bored, or they are,
It's like they miscalculated, right?
Yes.
Their version of happiness wasn't aligned with the trajectory that they found themselves on.
Right. Or they were taking that money and, doing things that weren't healthy or adding value to their everyday, or they were falling off the path of their success, getting into the wrong friend groups. And I saw these situations from afar, and I was like, wow. And I lived in LA for a year. That was my last stint.
Yeah.
And at the time I was modeling, but I also was pursuing my TV reel, because at the time I thought I wanted to be a journalist.
Right.
And I started interviewing 4 different celebs at the time about their life and their career. And it was the height of, YouTube and snackable entertainment.
Digestible content.
Yeah. So I was like, I got to get into this. And I'm really proud of myself for trying. But then I came back because I was like, you know what? First of all, I ran out of money, and I was like, I got to come back. Second of all, I got a full-time job downtown, secure, exactly what the parents want for me at CBC Television. So I ended up taking that, which was a great year, but probably not the best choice for me. But at the time, I didn't know anything else. I was like, you know what? I want to make it on my own. I don't want to have to be dependent on anybody. You see that a lot of the time. You'll see models who are like, hey, they either get married or,
there's a transition plan.
Yeah,
that a lot of them seem to take. Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I've always wanted to make it on my own. So I'm going to come back to Toronto and rebuild myself. And that was hard. I went through a kind of a tough period in my life in 2011, 2012, because after all those crazy experiences overseas, especially I have I'll tell you a story that I'll share off the podcast in Macau, which was crazy, which is Asia's Las Vegas. That happened to me.
Did you win big there?
Yeah, I tried. And after that, I was like, all these crazy experiences. And now I'm back in Toronto. And at the time I had to move back home. And I was like, now I'm back in Aurora, which is a beautiful city. And I love my parents, but it's, when you're so independent, then you have to be in a household where you feel like you are dependent.
Yeah.
It's
like a complete 180.
A complete 180. And it was a struggle. But at the same time, I've always had a growth mindset. And so because of that, and thankfully because of that, I was able to move myself out of that and start rebuilding myself and moving downtown and getting a beautiful job at Air Canada and you know, now pursuing what I'm pursuing. But all that struggle that I went to made me the person who I am today. And the best part about it is that I'm able to give back to others.
Was there something about modeling itself as a vocation that helped you build your resilience? And I ask because I had a very small stint with modeling.
Oh, yeah.
It happened for a day, literally. So, Kwaku, have you seen the picture on my Instagram? Oh man, I hope. Okay, you know what, listeners, if you're gonna do it, just go at Hamza K and scroll all the way down. You're gonna see this photo where I look like I'm strutting like Vince McMahon and I'm wearing this really colorful vest. That was me modeling for former vice provost of students over here. I think I'm getting her title right, Heather Lane Vitier. She was doing a project where she was immersing herself in a classroom here. And the first class she involved herself in was a fashion class over here. And so part of her culminating project was she had to contribute a lineup of clothes to, I think, the fashion show here. Kwaku's called Meta, is it? I think so, right? They have like Ryerson's annual fashion show. And so she recruited a bunch of staff, including myself, to walk the runway here. And Kelly, I kid you not, every misconception I've had about modeling, about the fashion industry went out the window. First of all, my respect has never been higher since that experience. But I realized that what it takes to be a model, and that was a very small glimpse into the world, was excruciating for me. Like, my personality could not handle it. That was tough because I became obsessed about my body. First of all, I had to constantly think about how it is that I was going to manage my time, my energy, my attention, my diet, my sleep, everything, my happiness to fit into that particular piece of attire. But then when you put it on, the show's not about you. You just have to walk. You are a vessel carrying that message forward. And as you're walking, everyone is just like scanning you up and down like Terminator. And the conversations I was having backstage with people, everyone was just so on edge. They were strung out. It was just like, whoa, this is really difficult. Now imagine doing this for however many years that you did it.
Yeah. And I'm still doing modeling on the side. So it's crazy. But I like that you said that. It is a cutthroat industry.
Oh, God.
However, here's a way of managing it. So modeling overseas especially, they could take 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds to look at your book. You give them your book. And I knew that was my value add to them, was just my physical and how I walked. That was really frustrating for me internally because I was like, I've worked so hard in my life.
I'm more than this.
Smart. Yeah. All these things, exactly. But then I quickly realized every single client wants something different. So that's okay. You know, if they don't want me, I'm not going to feel like I'm not good enough. Like, I could feel all these emotions. I'm not pretty enough. I could tell myself those things. But rather than telling myself those things, I say, hey, like, they wanted someone else. Everybody looks different. And it applies to relationships too. It's like, if I ever get rejected, it's, oh, okay, well, they want something different.
Right.
And that's okay.
Can't let it get to you.
No, you can't.
Do you think that living in LA was interesting because it kind of made you more relaxed and chill? Or is that misconception false? That people who live on the East Coast look to LA and they think that everyone is just kind of laid back, sauntering to work, driving with their top down? Or is it a lot more cutthroat and fierce than we think?
You know, I think people think that because majority of people there don't have a day job. So they act, they model, and so
it's the gig economy, right?
Yeah, it's the gig economy there. So everybody is moving around, everybody's out and about during the day. Where that sounded so Canadian, I'm sure.
Oot and boot.
And whereas in New York, it's not like that.
Yeah,
everybody's kind of in their office. They're going. They're less present. Not to say that people in LA are more present, though. I mean, again, it's a driving culture there, right? So everybody's driving. You can't really walk the streets. If you walk the streets of LA, you're either homeless or a tourist. So
yeah, basically, right?
It's really funny.
Or you're melting and just like turning into a puddle. Like, it's so friggin' hot there. Anytime I've gone there, I'm like, this is sweltering. And I've been to Dubai, I've been to Mumbai, and that place is hot. My goodness, LA is just, God forbid, if you find yourself out in the middle of the day. That's why so many people are out at night. Like,
yeah. And you know what? I'll never understand the convertible.
Yeah.
Because you're just literally burning your head because you're not moving. You're not moving in LA traffic. But to answer your question, basically, I would say it's different. It's different, but it's still cutthroat and, you know, hardworking culture in Los Angeles.
What do you think about this refrain from a poem that I think it's called Wear Sunscreen? It says, live in LA once, but leave before it makes you soft. Live in New York once, but leave before it makes you hard. Do you agree with that?
Ooh.
Do you think LA can make you soft if you stay there long enough?
I think it can. And I say that because everybody does move at a slower pace, but that doesn't mean that they're not working as hard, right? I think that it's... What do you mean by soft?
That's a good question. I don't know what the poet meant, but I think the idea would be that you lose your hustle, you lose the drive, you lose your focus because you get really comfortable and pampered over there just being up in the hills, and you kind of grow disillusioned and far from reality. Like as we're doing this podcast right now, I think Kanye's got his Sunday service going on right now at Coachella. I think like there was a hustle that Kanye embodied a while ago, and ever since he moved out to the Hollywood Hills, I think he's getting a little soft. I don't know.
I think soft is a good thing. And the reason why I say that is because I think by soft you could say, hey, like you're learning to, it's beautiful in LA.
Right. Slow down.
You go out, slow down, meditate.
Be more mindful.
Be more mindful. Not to say they are, but I think a lot of people, they take that time to go for that run in the morning and, rather, I don't know. Again, it's different. It's hard to compare the two. Although I would say that if I could choose one area to live, it would be Los Angeles over New York. New York's a great place to visit. But
just for weather alone, you'd go to LA?
Yeah, I would.
I love that. Is Tom based in LA?
Tom is based in Beverly Hills.
In Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
And he's anything but quote unquote soft, right? Like, I mean, he's just as active and as just focused as they get. The founder of Quest Nutrition. Shout out to Quest. I remember when I began to work out several years ago, my brother and I had plenty of Quest Nutrition products.
Oh, love my Quest
bars. Good
bars.
stuff. The Quest bars are still some of my favorite bars right now. How did you get connected with Tom?
Okay, so my good friend Danny, he's an architect in the city.
Danny Sang.
I
think episode 18, Danny's going to be on this podcast.
Amazing.
Yeah, he has great stories, by the way. Oh my goodness.
He's incredible. So, so he said, hey, Kelly, I know you loved personal development podcasts. You're going to love this one. So I started listening to this one. And Tom focuses on our mindset. He said he talks all about the growth mindset and the importance of having one, and how if you do have an itch in the back of your mind to do more or fulfill something that you know that you need, that you're here for, your why. Like everybody has a why, but not everybody figures it out or takes the time to develop it. And so everything he was saying in all of his podcasts, I was like, wow, like I'm absorbing so much. And interesting enough, I was one of the first of 600 followers when he first started.
No way. This is like old school.
Oh, old school. This is it was before Impact Theory. It was called something else. I believe it was called Inside Quest. Yeah. So before Impact Theory even started. So that was the original podcast I started listening to. And Danny's like, you're going to love this. And I loved it. I loved the motivation. I loved some of his advice on how to take action. And it's so funny. So I started engaging with the community, and that's the beauty of podcasts. You can really connect with your audience, and your audience will want to ask you questions. So I started asking questions, and their marketing director, I'm working at, my fast-paced job, and I remember it was a very tough day, and, I get this email from Impact Theory. I'm like, first of all, I still today don't know how they got my email. And she goes, hey, we're building out this really cool podcast campaign globally where we are choosing 6 cities around the world to build momentum around the Impact Theory brand and around mindset. And so she goes, hey, I'm connecting you with a guy named Daniel Burries.
Okay.
And I'd love for you guys, we have a huge community in Toronto, to, throw one event. So we threw one event together. I didn't know who Daniel Burries was. We became fast friends, both listeners of the podcast. Literally worked a street away from each other.
No way.
In Toronto.
No
so
way.
Funny.
Because he's up in Yorkville too, right?
So he is now, but before we were both on Bay Street in Toronto.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
And so then we got together, and he's like, let's throw this event. First event, super successful. We talked about, it was a community empowerment group. And I was like, wow, let's do another. And then we ended up doing, I think the total we did 11 total. So one event a month. And then we partnered with Shopify in Canada, and we started doing events, and you spoke for us at one of our events.
It was such a cool experience for me. Like that, as a speaker, you can sense an energy when you walk into a room, and that was some of the best energy I've ever felt. Like everyone there was there for the right reason. I've never received participation like that. Like I debriefed that event with Stephen Sills, who's the co-founder of Student Life Network. We talked about it. He was there for the first half of the event.
Okay.
He said that level of participation is very unique.
Wow.
That you're doing a lot of work behind the scenes, and you're energizing the community such that by the time they show up physically at the event, they're ready to talk, they're ready to engage, they're ready to listen and absorb. I think what you and Daniel have done with this brand is remarkable. What's happened? What's next for IMPACTx Toronto?
So IMPACTx Toronto. So we started it, well over a year ago now, and I started my Minimalism podcast, and so I've actually handed it off to Daniel to run it at this time, but I actually may be still associated with it, so I'll keep you posted on that.
Will you be speaking at it at some point?
Oh, I mean, I would love to.
Yeah.
I think that would be really great, really rewarding. I mean, the reason why I originally started it was because of them. They motivated me to continue these events, and we said, hey, Impact Theory, can you become a sponsor of our event? And they said yes.
Yeah.
So rather than just running it for them, we're actually the only city out of all the cities that actually continued on with this event.
Way to go.
And the goal of this event is to really, for me, like deep down, I was like, hey, like, what am I doing with these events? I really want to empower and connect people.
Right.
And that was, I would say that my first event at Shopify, I'd never felt so fulfilled in my entire life. I just wanted to cry because I was like, I am helping people feel that, yes, there's a reason why you're put on this earth.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't figured out your why, here's an opportunity to. And I know that that's something I would have wanted earlier in my life. And it's something that I figured out later by myself and through mentor figures of mine. But if I can do that for other people, like that's an amazing thing.
And I think you've done it. I think that I have continued to benefit from that one exchange. I mean, we've become friends since then. I've connected with Daniel, with Danny. There's a whole bunch of people that I still talk to from that day. We have like coffees that are extending all the way throughout the entire year. I hope that you can continue to stay connected with it because I think you're building this new thing. You're building this missing piece in at least the Toronto ecosystem for entrepreneurs, for people who are in the gig economy, for people who are interested in professional development, personal development, all of that.
Yes. And those who, are kind of lost, those who have extreme anxiety, those who are feeling depressed, it's an opportunity to get out there and connect with people. And it's also for those entrepreneurs who are working on their own, those who don't get to connect with colleagues every day and they feel alone. But if you come to these community events, you realize like, hey, I'm not the only one.
Totally. It was cool to see Danny bring out his entire team at that last event that I was at. Like that was really awesome. And I think that everyone benefited from that, like top to bottom. Everyone on his team really, they got a lot from it. And I'm thinking about doing the same thing with my team at Student Life Network and just thinking about the other organizations that I'm affiliated with and just bring them to that event and just seeing what happens. Because I feel like the conversations that are curated there, and I know that Raf spoke there as well, George spoke there as well, the conversations that are generated there, I don't think are happening as often as they need to.
No, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's huge when you say that because you're like, hey, I want to get my network out there and see what else comes out of each individual because you learn so much more because you really dive deeper and people are more vulnerable.
Totally. Kelly, speaking of diving deeper, we're at the Halo Skull segment of this podcast. You've probably been wondering what the skull is about, but you've listened to a couple of episodes, so you're familiar with what happens now, right? Yes or no? Do you want to move forward with this segment?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's make you a little bit uncomfortable, Kelly. This segment is called Explain That Gram. Okay. And it was inspired by Sean Evans and First We Feast and their wildly popular show, Hot Ones. So what we've done is we've gone all the way to the recesses of your Instagram feed.
Oh, wow.
We've gone past the point where it looks like you were taking photos with a potato. Like this is like several years ago, like some of your OG pictures. And we just want you to provide some context and explain what was happening. And I chose some really interesting ones here. So first of all, we have CW Kelly Foss and Slash.
Yes.
So it looks like Slash is always dressed for Halloween. Like this is like
yes. Yeah. Okay. So I can
How did you
explain
meet
that
Slash? Yeah.
Oh, I mean, this is the thing. When you live in Los Angeles, you meet celebrities because celebrities live there, right? Yeah. So they live there. They're out and about. They're at Whole Foods. They're, you're walking down the street, you see them all the time.
Right.
So it almost it almost doesn't faze you anymore. And it's funny that I posted that because for a long time, especially after I lived there for a year, I had so many moments with interesting people, and I wouldn't say that the celebrities were even the most interesting sometimes, but sometimes when I did meet a celebrity, there's a period where I'm like, I don't need to take a picture. I don't need to ask them for a picture.
They just become normal peeps, right?
I'm loving this moment, this great conversation.
Yeah.
And this is the best takeaway. I don't need to show my world, and I don't need them to say, "Oh, you're cooler because of this." Like I don't need that. You know, I don't need that. So
did you get starstruck when you met him?
I actually didn't, but I knew exactly who he was, and I knew that my dad would appreciate it. So I took the picture.
How did you approach him? Like, what did you go up to him and say? Like, hey, / big fan.
Yeah, hey, like it's great to meet you. Like, would you mind if I get a picture with you? I did have a short conversation with him, but yeah, that's really cool that you chose that one.
We found that.
Yeah.
Shout out to you for not getting
that was actually
starstruck.
That
was New Year's Eve? So you met him at a party?
Yeah, met him at a New Year's Eve party in 2012 going into 2013.
Wow, there you go. So 2013, that would have been the year that I met a celebrity as well. Oh. I met Batista.
Oh, wow.
Who's in Guardians of the Galaxy, famous wrestler and whatnot. And so I was coming back from a flight from Orlando, I believe, and I was with Jen Gonzalez. Shout out to Jen G. We flew back, and we were in the New York airport, and we were stopping over, and I recalled boarding the flight and seeing this one guy with his hood on, with listening to music, but he was occupying 2 seats. Like, he was a huge guy. Like, his bicep, I kid you not, was bigger than my torso. Oh my God. And I was like, okay, that looks like someone famous. I couldn't put the name with the person that I saw. And then I saw him get off the flight and just kind of sit down, try to be inconspicuous. And I was like, oh, that's Dave Bautista. I need to do this because I know all of my buddies, Amer, Azim, everyone would have loved this, right? I go up to him, and I've never done this before. I've never actually talked to a celebrity of that caliber before. I went up to him, and I just stuttered for like what felt like an hour straight. I was like, hi, Dave? And he looked at me like, oh my God, here we go again. I'm just trying to relax and get onto my next flight.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, what's up? And I didn't have an answer. I just blanked. And then he saw that I blanked. He's like, you want a photo? I'm like, yeah, let's do this. And so we got a photo. And then as soon as he walked away, I just collapsed because of the adrenaline rush that happened.
Oh,
I got so starstruck, man. It was so ridiculous. I'm so embarrassed by that. Oh, my goodness.
I wouldn't be embarrassed by that at all. But I find that it's interesting that he didn't engage with you more. Maybe he was busy, or maybe he was in a rush. But
I think he was, because he was just filming at that time. He was probably filming Spectre, the movie that he was in, the 007 movie. So I think his headspace was all over the place. He had just left the WWE. He was now trying to break into Hollywood. So I don't think he was in the best of moods in that particular day. It was also like a really early morning flight too.
Oh, okay.
Can I go to photo number 2, Kelly?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so
I found
we
this
have 3 of
interesting
these.
side note because if you'll see that I haven't been very active on my Instagram as of late, in terms of my posts.
Yeah.
I think stories are becoming very popular these days. But I also realize that, hey, like I think a lot of people do these things for affirmation, but it's also clutter. So I find that now that I've eliminated more clutter out of my life, I can focus on, like actually enjoying those moments rather than having to take pictures of every single moment.
I want to come back to that, and when we go into the performance point segment, because I also have not posted in almost 2 months, and I've got such great stories that I want to share with everyone, but I've been so in the moment. I need to find that balance. So let's talk about that in just a second as we get past this. This is a photo from Central Park where you're posing with look like the Avengers on their off day. Like that Hulk over there just is not inspiring any confidence whatsoever. It looks like War Machine is wearing like sneakers over there. Yeah, what was going on here? I have so many questions.
August 2013.
Yes.
This is me in my years of traveling constantly. I've been to New York probably over 30 times.
Jeez Louise.
Manhattan.
Yeah.
Here, like Toronto and back.
Fashion hub, yeah.
Yeah.
But also just marketing, PR, all of that. I mean, like it's a business hub, period.
Yeah. And when I lived in Los Angeles, I was on the set of Wall Street 2 in New York. So I lived there for a little bit to shoot that.
Wall Street 2, the movie?
I'm in the
Shia
movie.
LaBeouf?
Yeah, it's
Wait,
funny.
are you in the final cut?
I'm in the final cut, but I'm in the background, but it's funny. It was a great experience.
Okay, we'll talk afterwards. I want to go back and watch that.
Yeah, I'll tell you about that. So anyway, then I kind of got a taste in New York and started to love it and built a lot of friendships there. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the experiences why I literally went to New York on my own, as usual.
Yeah.
I'll go on my own, just meet my girlfriends there. Sometimes I've taken trips there just as for, a self-love trip.
Sure,
just by myself.
Yeah. Get inspired again,
Yeah. So that day, I was actually meeting up with a friend in Central Park for lunch. And then as I left, I ran into these guys. And I have a lot of energy. And My boyfriend always tells me this. He's like, you have so much energy. Like, when do you stop? And so when I saw these guys, and I've always loved comic books and stuff, which is another side note. And so I saw these characters. I was like, oh yeah, can I get a picture?
Yeah, and they seemed very willing. And
it was one of those moments. Yeah.
Was it only 3 Avengers? Or were there more that were off camera? Like, did they have the whole squad?
I believe there were 4. One of the guys that took the picture.
One taking the picture. What was he dressed up as?
I don't remember.
That's awesome. And our last picture, Kelly, this is super interesting. I can't tell what's going on over here. It looks like a remake of Interview with the Vampire, or you're auditioning for Hamilton, or maybe both. What's happening over here?
So I have a good story for this
one.
I know you guys can't see it.
Yeah.
We're just talking about it.
For the listeners, they're dressed in Harlequin Historical is the hashtag here.
Have you heard of Harlequin novels?
I have heard of Harlequin novels. I would always pass them by when I was going to Burroughs Hall Library. Shout out to Burroughs Hall. And my mom would catch me looking at them and she'd say, Hamza, you're too young for this. Yeah, the covers were very salacious.
Oh my gosh, I love her response.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to start from an interesting story before I get into this. Is when I lived in Los Angeles, one of the celebrity figures that I interviewed was Fabio. Now,
The Fabio. Oh my goodness.
So the Fabio, everybody
Legend.
knows Fabio. He lives in Gold's Gym in Los Angeles, and wonderful guy. And I actually met him at the gym. And I was like, hey, like, can I interview? I literally went up to him and said, hey, like, I would love to interview.
He's in the middle of a set. He was just like pumping all the iron, and
I somehow had the energy to go up or the confidence at the time to go up and say, hey, like, I'd study his background because I'd heard that he'd done over 100 covers, hundreds of covers.
Oh my goodness.
Hundreds of covers. He is the Harlequin novel.
He's one character in like all these unrelated plots. Like he's the same character. The greatest shared universe, the Harlequin shared universe, the cinematic universe starring only Fabio.
Yeah. And so actually, interesting enough, so after my interview with him, a week later, I was in Toronto and I got a call from my agent. And she goes, hey, I booked a Harlequin cover for you. And I was like, no kidding. Literally, my first cover. I've shot 9 covers to date.
Yeah.
But that was one of my first. And I thought to myself, wow, this is so funny. I interviewed Fabio and now I'm on the cover of
the universe is
novel.
telling you something. So wait, I learned something new about you every time we meet. It just sank in that you're on Harlequin novel covers. Can I get some book, like just the titles after this as well?
Yeah, I'll show you.
Okay, I cannot wait to see this. This is so exciting.
My dad, it's the funny side note, is like my dad will see them at the mall and he'll be like, oh yeah, we got to get them. And it's like, Dad, I hope you have not read those. Do not read any of those. Do not open those.
Because the reader's supposed to imagine that is me.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So weird. So weird.
Oh my goodness. Well, Kelly, this brings us to the juicy part of the podcast where we talk about specifically how it is that you as a high performer manage and optimize your time, your energy, and your attention. And I know that in the preparation for this, we have like the show notes and they have all the questions in there, and knowing you probably answered all of them. But what we're going to do here is just synthesize all of it with the theme of minimalism. So we've never actually done this before. We've never actually tailored these questions to the specific guest that we have. And I think I'm really excited to do this moving forward. Mm-hmm. I want to speak to you specifically about how you decide what not to spend your time, your energy, and your attention on. Because I think we've covered the last 14 episodes. We've talked about how it is that you set goals, how it is that you prioritize, what to do in the morning, what to do, in the evening, what to do when you're working, all of that. Let's talk about what not to do and how it is that Kelly Foss decides what not to do. And let's start by talking about time specifically. How do you decide what not to spend your time on?
Okay. So this takes trial and error to start because nobody's a master of this, but I'm getting closer every single day. That's the beautiful thing. So what you need to do is either sit down or look around. Go somewhere. Go into your home. Go in the outdoors and figure out what is essential.
Right.
Identify what's essential. Eliminate what is not, and then build a system around it. So, as Raphael Wrong would always say, some really important productivity systems that we need in place in order to fulfill the essential things that we want out of life. So for me, it is what's essential. My full-time job's essential.
Yep.
Like I want to be fully present. I want to be maximizing my time when I'm there. My podcast, passion project, super incredibly passionate about that. I want to keep building. I want to keep writing. I also write from Minimalism Life and, relationship. My relationship's very important to me. My friends, my family are very important to me. And my health and fitness, very important to me. So I've got these 5 key priorities in my life, and that's out of order, by the way. I always feel like love and, giving love and receiving love, that's number 1.
Right.
And then everything else is secondary. But that being said, yeah, so by identifying what's essential, it's easier to say no to things. And you've talked about this on your other podcast, because I've listened to a few of your episodes, about how you need to be very cognizant of your time. And that's something that I wasn't, especially in my modeling years. Oh, Kelly, let's meet. Oh, let's meet. So I'm going to be there. There's one point in my life that I realized, hey, like, I should start saying no.
Yeah.
Because this is my time, and this is going in a direction that I don't want to go in.
Right.
So now I'm very smart about, hey, like, everybody has the same amount of time. And right now, it's interesting that you're interviewing me today, because as much as minimalism has helped clear the excess and help me focus on, hey, like, these are the essential things, I can accomplish them all. I need to figure out when to tell myself no. Like, you can't, you have to stop. So I have to set deadlines. Like, no, you can't do this. So I've been able to manage my time better, especially those essential things in my life, with what I call the bullet journal.
Okay, do tell.
Have you heard of the bullet journal?
I've heard about it. I've seen it in practice maybe once or twice, but I don't fully grasp it.
So it's an analog system journal. You can buy it at Indigo. Just buy a notebook.
Yeah.
And you draw out the month, each month in a year. So let's just do a calendar year.
Sure.
And on the first page, you put out all your goals for that month. Then, as you turn pages, you go week by week. And the beautiful thing about this is that every single day, I write down my daily tasks. And in the front of the month, are my goals for that month, right? And then you have your goals for the year, at either the end of the book or the beginning of the book.
Right.
And you can actually carry them over. So if you don't accomplish those goals in that month, you can carry them over. But anyways, so what's great about this journal is that by writing down all your daily tasks, you can cross them out. So the beauty of that is you're like, hey, like, I feel accomplished.
Yeah.
So
you get that dopamine rush from that check mark, right?
Yes, it's amazing. And not just that, you realize, hey, like, this is all the time I have in a week. This is everything's essential. So let's write all those things down first. Yeah. So health and fitness. I love running because it gives me a boost. So you got to make time for that. Relationship. What are you doing that week together? Full-time job. The thing with full-time jobs is it is an analog system. So with full-time jobs, I just basically anything that is outside of my full-time job's calendar that's very important that I may forget, then I'll put it in.
Right.
But everything else is ever changing.
Yeah.
So I leave that in my work calendar. But especially like personal commitments where you're like, hey, like, yeah, I can do that. Oh, yeah, I'll see you for coffee. But then you forget about it because you don't write it down.
Exactly.
But now Lauren and I, we have these bullet journals and we write them down. It has been a lifesaver for me. I know it's a physical item, but I always like to joke and laugh like, hey, like, minimalists still own things.
Totally. They own things. And, I use a journal myself. I use the 5-minute journal by Intelligent Change and also their productivity planner. I've tried to use digital task lists and to-do lists, and they don't have the same almost corrective and therapeutic effect that writing things down and crossing them off yourself does. Very interesting. It almost sounds like you've got a to-do list and you've got a must-do list. And it feels like your to-do list draws from the must-do list. Like you talked about those 5 areas of your life, the heat maps, the things that give you your energy. And then from there, stem all the things that you need to work on a day-to-day basis. And I think a lot of people, a lot of the listeners, and certainly I was at this place in my life once upon a time, where my to-dos were governed by what I felt like doing the day of. And they would just spring from reactive sources. I mean, I would react to whatever inputs I was receiving, whatever my boss wanted to do, whatever emails were coming in, what was happening in the news. And that was a surefire way to burn out. I didn't actually have control over my time. I don't have control over my energy or my attention. I think that my priorities were managing me versus the other way around.
Exactly. Rory Vader. Have you heard of him?
Rory Vader, no.
So he's an author and self-discipline expert. And he basically says that we need to, Vaden, Rory Vaden is his last name.
Still cool.
He says that if we don't manage our priorities, like somebody else will.
Yeah.
And that clicked maybe 3 or 4 years ago for me because I was like, wow, like it's not just going to happen for me.
No.
I need to do it. And the bullet journal has kind of like capsulized that. Like it's like, hey, like this is everything that I need to do, and these are all the things that are moving me in the direction that I want to go in, which is great. But at the same time, I'm imperfect. Like I have days where, and I have weeks, and I say it's interesting that you're interviewing me today because the past 3 weeks of my life have been insane.
Wow.
But you know what? That's my fault. So that's what I love. It's like everybody has the same amount of time in the day.
Right.
Everybody's busy. And that's a whole other conversation.
Sure.
But it's like, hey, like I can manage my time so that I don't feel this way.
Yeah. Is it true that maybe you misprioritized in the last 3 weeks? Like you prioritized the wrong things or over-prioritized?
I didn't. I would say a combination of the two. Okay. It was more so I haven't told myself when to stop. And what's great about the bullet journal is that you're kind of telling yourself, hey, I have an hour for this. I have 2 hours for this. That way you're not lingering for 2 hours on something.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah.
So you're more aware of that, which is great. But I would say that, and what Rory Vaden says is we need to multiply our time. And I love what he says. He goes, it's not about prioritizing time. It's about prioritizing self. And what he means by that is we got to ask ourselves the question, hey, like, what can we do today that'll make tomorrow better? And I love that. He's like, what is the stuff that I don't want to do that I can do now? So I find that since he said that, literally, I spent the past 5 days, I'm like, I've got 5 things I need to accomplish over Easter weekend, in addition to seeing my family, because that's very important to me. So I'm like, okay, what is the thing that's giving me the most anxiety and that I need to get done? Okay, I'm going to focus on that. So I got that done first, and the weekend felt so much lighter. So it's interesting how you can do that, but then you also have to understand that, hey, like it's prioritizing yourself. So that's a reminder to those who ever feel overwhelmed. It's like you need to tell yourself, I'm only allotting this amount. But sometimes things just need to get done.
Yeah, totally. And how do you deal with those moments when they happen? And the thing that relates into the next question about energy is like, how is it that you then look to the energy that's available to you with the time that you have that's finite? You've been able to generate a almost infinite amount of energy based on the time you have. Let me actually rephrase that because that's actually not true. My friends who are listening to this, Adil's listening to this right now thinking, Hamza, there's nowhere true. There's no such thing as infinite energy when it comes to individuals. Sorry, Adil. You have the same 24 hours as everyone else, relatively speaking. And then with that, you're able to generate an amount of energy that is proportional to the things that you've done well, how you're eating, your mental state, the sleep that you received, all of that. But then the things that need to get done, the reactive work that comes your way, how do you manage your energy while that's happening? Because that can be a huge energy suck. That's almost like an energy vampire just draining you, and then it has a cascading effect on your time and your focus.
Oh yeah, I'm super and hyper aware of it now. So we did an episode on digital minimalism.
Ooh.
And that's by far my favorite episode to date of all of our episodes.
Gonna listen to that after this.
And the reason why, and that was just a back and forth between Laura and I, we didn't have a guest on the show, but we had read a book. There's actually the most recent book that I just finished by Cal Newport. It's called Digital Minimalism.
Nice.
It just came out now a month ago.
Wow.
And so we read this book and we're like, hey, let's deconstruct this because there were so many learnings from this book. And so he talks about how basically our digital clutter is it's like a cognitive epidemic right now. Everything, we are allowing our digital technologies to control us, and we need to control these devices. So that's what our conversation's about. Like, how can we do that? So now, how can we become more aware of how much we're using these things and how much we're reacting? It goes back to that important, urgent model as well, right? Like what's important, what's less important, and what's more urgent, what needs to be attended to now.
Right.
So when it comes to my digital devices, the first thing we did is we actually cleared our phones. We renovated our smartphones.
How so?
So all of the apps on your phone, they actually don't need to be on your front screen. There's a way to hide them all. Because that's what we see every single day. And turning off your notifications, we've heard this before.
Totally.
There's all these things that we can do. My morning routine used to be, a lot of the time, I'd be like, wow, why is it so long? Because I was spending 30 minutes on my phone that I wasn't realizing.
In bed, you're on Twitter, you're on Reddit, all of that, yeah.
So I decided, hey, when I wake up in the morning, one thing about our world these days is that we do need to be connected. And the thing about being connected all the time is you worry, what if there's something urgent? So when I do wake up, I'll check my phone. If there's something urgent, I'll literally check it for a minute. If there's something urgent, great. If there isn't, great. I will leave it charging and I will get to my day.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be distracted by those things. And you know what? Your friends will appreciate it. You'll learn to say like, hey, you know, sorry, like you don't even need to say sorry. It's like, hey, you know, I was doing this. I'll get to you soon. Or, you know, the thing is, and what I love about this digital minimalism book is that he says that digital clutter is fragmenting our focus.
Big time.
And he references Andrew Sullivan. He's an incredible writer and blogger. I don't know if you've heard of Andrew Sullivan, but he has an article that he wrote in New York Magazine called I Used to Be a Human Being.
Oh, shit.
And it is the most mind-blowing article I've ever read.
Wow, that's high praise. I'm definitely reading that as well.
Yeah. So he says, speaking of all the endless distractions and overload of information that has made us like manic, like information addicts today, he says that it broke me and it may break you too.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, yeah, it's a cognitive epidemic and it's killing people inside. And I'm like, you're so right. And then he was saying like, these are the things that we can do in order to avoid that. You know, we can become so overwhelmed by all of that. And it's crazy. Like try putting your phone away for 6 hours. You're going to be reaching for something.
Phantom vibrations.
Yes.
You feel them, even though there's no notifications whatsoever. You just feel like maybe there's something happening.
Right.
It's twitchiness almost.
And it's a temptation.
Big time.
We have an episode on minimalism temptation, and it's not just physical goods that you buy. It's, you're getting that text message. It's almost like eating a piece of cake.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, it fulfills you.
That's it. Someone sees me. I'm being acknowledged. Those little likes, that like counter that you see just keep on, you know, either increasing or decreasing, has a direct correlation on how it is that you feel about yourself. I mean, I think that these social mediums and technology has done a great job, almost scary good job of tapping into our limbic system. Like they've just hijacked our senses of memory, emotion, feeling. I mean, we're now tethered to these devices. And you have to ask, like, who's managing who? Are these devices managing us? Is this how the AI takeover happens? Is this how, are these our future overlords? Don't know.
That's why Cal Newport, this is kind of his byline. Sums up his book. He says that our digital life is just as important as our physical health.
Yeah, big time.
Because that'll fall to the wayside.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens.
Because we're talking about, the conversation is happening right now about junk food, about what goes into our bodies physically, but what about what goes in, you know, through our eyes into our minds? And
yeah, he actually compares an athlete eating junk food to a business professional surfing through social media.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's the same thing. It's moving you away from your goal.
Exactly. And there's some habits that I need to kick for sure. Like I'm a huge, like till today, I enjoy my blog sites, like my gossip sites. Like I'll go on Media Takeout and Bossip, and I'm a regular consumer of all things World Star, all of that Six Buzz. And it's entertaining, but I think that it's also compromising my ability to focus, and it's taking me further and further away from those moments where I need to sink into deep work, because I'm like, I want to see the new World Star Fight compilation.
I like that you said deep work.
And Cal Newport again, right?
Yeah. And Andrew Sullivan. That's the reason why I wanted to even do that episode and kind of take this on in my own life and make small changes, is because remember in university, we're the same age, Hamza. Like we went to university, we had that deep focus. I would shut off. I didn't get a cell phone till halfway through. But when I had a phone, I would shut it off and I'd have deep focus in university, in the library. Nowadays, I'm like, wow, like I want to get closer to that, which I already have, and I'm so thankful for it. I've been on this journey with digital minimalism for a couple months now, and I can get into those focus modes. And if I get a notification from a friend, I usually don't see it. But if my phone is near me, I just let them know, like, I don't want to fall out of focus.
Totally. And I think what's happening now is the evidence of this is I'm seeing this firsthand as an instructor here at Ryerson. Like all my students, like I say, not all of them, obviously, but like an increasing amount of them are hopped up on ketamine, on different types of amphetamines, all kinds of ADHD medication. And I think that's a substitute for growing up in a world where their attention has been fragmented. I don't blame them. I blame the parents. I blame the parents that are our age or similar ages that didn't know how to teach good digital wellness habits, because this was the wild, wild west. It still is. We're still figuring this out in real time. Like the research is only starting to come out about how detrimental this is. And I think the verdict is in, based on the few pieces of research that are conclusive, is that social media acts and behaves in a way that is very similar to any type of drug, any type of lethal, harmful drug. And I know that Bailey Parnell, my partner, would echo that sentiment based on the research that she's doing as well, which is like, you could do a line of Coke, or you could, scroll through your Facebook timeline.
Yeah.
Dynamic wise, they're almost identical in terms of what they do for you.
Absolutely. And I do want to remind your audience too that there's a flip side. So and the author Cal Newport also points this out. He says that he's a digital technologist.
Yeah.
He likes technology,
Sure.
and he's also a millennial.
Yeah.
He says it's not that technology is bad. It's just that we should use these tools to our advantage.
That's it.
So let's renovate our phones. Let's renovate how we use our technology so that it actually adds to our everyday. Like, for example, I love using Uber. Mm-hmm. It's an app that adds to my everyday. I enjoy having the Photos app. I enjoy having my email, but I don't need hundreds of apps. The problem is people download apps. Oh, this is cool. And then they never use them. It's just like a physical piece of clothing that you're not using in
That's
your
it.
house.
And I think that, I totally agree with that. I love technology. I love the promise of technology, love social media, love the promise of social media. But I think that we all need to do a better job of learning these habits that we've seemingly perfected when it comes to our inboxes and other areas of our life, but also like bring that mentality of inbox zero to your social media, bring that mentality of disconnecting and, regulating the time that you spend on it to technology, so on and so forth. And I think it's happening. I'm more optimistic than I am pessimistic here.
Yeah.
I think that there's enough conversation, there's enough of a groundswell where people are now looking at this problem the way it should be looked at, and I think that a solution is imminent.
Okay. Can I take it to Marie Kondo now?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay.
Bring
so
it back.
The whole idea is that, we're eliminating this clutter so that we can be more present and, moving forward in a direction that makes sense for us. With Marie Kondo, what she does, and what I love about what she does, is that she says, like, hey, like, here's all your clutter. This is where you are today. Let's figure out what's essential, what's not, and then let's organize it.
Right.
What I love about that, so she goes in. Have you ever seen her Netflix series?
I've seen trailers of it. No,
so she goes into different people's homes and she basically, like, literally just declutters.
Yeah, fix my life. Yeah.
Organizes everything. The problem with that, though, is that it doesn't, and Lauren and I like to argue this, it doesn't solve the root of the problem.
Huh.
So, for example, if someone's declutter their house and organize and they're like, oh yeah, this is great, like, coming back to their house a year from now, is it going to look like that?
Because you don't have Marie Kondo's brain, right?
Because you don't have Marie Kondo's brain. Exactly. So what are the habits that you need to change in order to continue on with this lifestyle?
Yes.
And that's a question that I think a lot of the people on this show aren't asking themselves. So that's the fear. I know there's a reality show like The Biggest Loser. They lose all this weight, but I hear that the majority of them gain it all back.
Right.
It's like the yo-yo diet.
The yo-yo diet. And you see this happen with lottery winners too. Like, they're just flushed with all this money and they revert back to, in some cases, they actually fall off the path that they were on and they enter into financial ruin after winning the lottery, just because the habits were never in place.
Exactly.
You get the quick fix, you get the outcome, but you don't have the process.
Exactly. And so that's what we really stress is like, hey, like, this, how did you get here? Ask yourself that question. How did I get here?
Yeah.
How did I get such a messy closet? Anybody listening? How did I get here? What do I need to change? What are the habit changes that need to be made? Right? So it's so interesting because I used to, especially if you have a day where you're feeling down or something, you go shopping. I mean, I would go shopping. And Courtney Carver, who's a huge thought leader in the space, we interviewed her as well. She said, yeah, I used to go shopping. But now I have other outlets. And not just that, it's when I see all this stuff, like, I've literally didn't go to the mall for 8 months last year.
Wow.
And every time I go through it, I feel so much more calm. I used to be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
When you go into a store and there's so many options, I love everything in the store.
Yeah.
I just want to buy everything. So rather than doing that, just honestly leaving with nothing.
I love that. And you're seeing malls starting to warp. Like malls are responding to a growth in online shopping. Like they know that people aren't physically coming in. So malls are becoming more extreme in their tactics, in the way that they're merchandising, like louder colors, more aggressive salespeople. I mean, they're trapping you with very creative ways to walk through the store such that you get disoriented. There's no rhyme or pattern to these malls anymore. Yeah. And I, as a deep introvert, I resent malls. I can't do malls. I walk into a mall and I walk right out. I swear to God, the other day I walked into an H&M. I had to pick up something. I can't remember what it was. And I walked in and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to buy it here. I just walked home and I just bought it online. So overwhelmed by it. But this conversation, though, Kelly, has inspired me to take a hard look at my own habits when it comes to consumption. And not just in terms of retail, but in terms of information, in terms of technology, heck, in terms of even friends, too, and family, and really think about, from a holistic perspective, what's important to me. And so I want to thank you for inspiring us, inspiring myself, Kwaku, and the listeners to take a hard look and really think about minimalism as, this isn't a fad. This isn't something that's here today, gone tomorrow. This is going to be, I have a strong feeling, this is going to be part of the zeitgeist. It's going to be plugged in to this way of thinking, way of being, way of doing that's going to be here for a very, very long time.
Decades.
I think for decades, I would say even centuries, because I think that this might be the philosophical answer that we need for a lot of the meta problems that we're experiencing, whether it's the environment, whether it's the economy. I think that really at the heart of minimalism is this idea of what's essential. Exactly. And that's a question that has long eluded us.
We are unlearning everything that our parents taught us.
Boom. Kelly, are you ready for the second last, I think actually the final segment of this podcast, which is a rapid fire round?
Yay.
10 questions just for you. And the challenge here is that you have to answer them very quickly, and there's not going to be much time for explanation unless prompted.
Okay.
Ready to go? See what you did there. Well done.
I talked very fast. So.
Okay, rapid fire round. Question number 1 rapid fire with Kelly Foss. Question number 1, what would be your Paris Fashion Week runway song?
Ooh, oh my God.
You can take time to think as long as your answer is rapid.
Ooh, oh man, I don't know. It would probably be a song by Hugo.
Okay, any particular song by Hugo?
Probably.
Well, Kwaku, do you have one?
Fade, Kanye West.
Fantastic choice. That's actually a really good choice. Yeah, I was thinking myself would be like, I'm going to go with Azalea Banks 212, but no, we're doing Fade, Kanye.
Yeah. Okay.
Way to go. Okay, question number 2. What's a game-changing book that everyone should read?
Mindset by Carol Dweck.
Boom. What would 16-year-old Kelly be most surprised to learn about Kelly today?
That she just kept going and she just didn't stop.
Because there were moments where 16-year-old Kelly might have stopped.
Yes.
Interesting. Who is a mentor that changed your life?
Very, very good friend of mine that I won't name.
Okay, fair enough. Why should people practice minimalism?
Because it will get them closer to the lifestyle that they want to live.
Love it. What's the scariest goal that you've yet to reach? Something out there in the distance that you're like, I don't know.
What's my scariest goal is everything that I want out of this minimalism path that I'm looking for. My goal is to become a thought leader in the space, and it's scary because I'm doing everything I can to get there, but I don't know what it's going to be like when I get there.
My friend, I think you're well on your path there. I mean, when I think about who in my life I would turn to for any questions about minimalism, you're the only name that comes up.
Thank you.
Keep at it. What was your favorite childhood TV show?
Saved by the Bell.
Saved by the Bell. What's one thing people tend to get wrong about either models or the fashion industry in general?
That we're not hardworking.
How do you define success, Kelly Foss?
Success is happiness, but it's also understanding your why and basically purpose.
And is it possible that those are mutually exclusive up until a certain point? Like your definition of happiness now, so the things that you're enjoying right now might not be in sync with your why?
I would say that happiness is a sense of purpose. I would just simply put it like that.
I got to think about it. That's actually a really good answer. And I think you're the first person I've ever heard who's separated those two things. Maybe your purpose was never meant to give you intrinsic happiness. Maybe it transcends that,
I think it transcends the happiness.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And the last question, Kelly, you have given us so many great pieces of advice here, but what is the best piece of advice that you personally have ever received?
3 pieces.
Boom.
1, love and be loved. Number 2, choose an interest and develop a passion. And number 3, give back.
Wow. If we could drop these mics, we would just drop these mics right now. That was perfect. Kelly, you rock that. Way to go. That was the most succinct, most profound rapid fire that we've had till date. Like that lasted all of 2 minutes.
Huh.
Way to go. But you've left us with 2,000 years worth of insight and wisdom over here. So thank you for that. In closing out, where would you want people to follow you online? Where can they find you? Where can they find your podcast? Let's do all the plugs right now.
Absolutely. So you can find Lauren and I for our Minimalism podcast, which is called Millennial Minimalists, at Millennial Minimalists on Instagram and Facebook. Those are the 2 areas that we are. And you can actually find me at CW Kelly Foss. That's CW and then my full name, KELLYFOSS. And it's CW because, long story short, when I was in LA building my web series, it was called Connect with Kelly. I know, really funny.
I've always wondered.
But it's
CW,
called
Connect with Kelly.
So it's just CW means connect with, because I love connecting people. And to be honest, I think that the reason we're all here is to connect with others. And, that's the whole meaning of life.
There you have it, folks. We connected with Kelly. Kelly connected with us. And I imagine this is going to be the first of many times that we're going to have a conversation on the Ideas into Action podcast. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Well,
this has been an absolute pleasure.
This is incredible. You're an incredible conversationalist. So this was really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Friends, until next week, we're out.